All right, so I have a couple of things. I mean, this is kind of like what I was doing anyway on Monday, right? Let's talk a little bit about these brushes. They can come in really handy once you know how to change pressure, weight, their edges, their shape, etc. So first of all, again, I have tools on the left-hand side. I have certain boxes on the right-hand side. I have some parameters on the top side. Depending on which tool I pick over here on the left, right? Certain parameters that sort of govern how I use that tool, right, start to pop up on the top. If you don't have that configuration, here's how you get to it. You go to Window, Windows pull down, Workplace, and you can load the Essentials Classic interface. So like, I guess just the Essentials, they like hid the stuff at the top. I don't know why. It's really useful to be up there. I don't get it. It's not progress, but you can always go back to the default, Essentials default, to get those right back into place. So as I select a brush, as I move my cursor around, you can see that I have a round brush to shape. In fact, you can see up at the top here, the size is 252 pixels in diameter. And you can see that the circle, not only is it just a circle configuration shape, but that it sort of erases more in the center and then feathers out to less erasing in the top, right? So if I wanted to change that, of course, I could change the shape and go to circle and make it nice and hard edge, right? I'm going to go back to that and just sort of select soft round. I'll keep that size, why not? And you can see that I can actually quite carefully start to feather some of this information out. All right. I'm going to go over to this one, and I'm just going to get rid of a lot of this. That's not necessary. All right, and then I'm going to do the same thing over on this side with this layer. Try to feather that out a bit. Okay. Let's go ahead and turn these up in opacity. It still might look a little weird, right? But hopefully we start to soften some of these seams where line work or edges stop or start or overlap, so that we don't have anything that's too bad here. All right, then last but not least, I'm going to add another layer, right? Just go down to the box and hit the plus sign at the bottom. We've added a layer 4. And I'm just going to use this layer to paint in a black background. I'm going to click and drag that layer so it's down at the very bottom of my layer list. That way it's underneath all of these other layers that I've been drawing. Go ahead and switch that swatch to black. And I'll go to the paintbrush, right, which again acts just like a paintbrush. In this case, I've used a hard round paintbrush. I can adjust the size, and I can start to draw in that layer 4. Something strangely satisfying about that. Right, so here we go. Let's go. Look at that. All right. That's at 100%. That's at 100%. That's at 100%. Right. What I rushed through the other day was sort of showing how you can again take some of the silhouettes in Illustrator, copy and paste them in. But really, that's not the hard part. You know, the challenge sometimes can be sort of figuring out where to establish an eye level, right? Particularly if you don't have an eye level perspective. I've tried to make these all look like they're at the same sort of eye level, right? Where I'm actually standing immersed, looking right down this thing, right? So one of the first things we probably should do is go ahead and establish that eye level. I'll go ahead and try it now. Still some goofiness here. I'm going to go ahead and select this and get that eraser tool. Yeah, and erase that little bit of edge over there away. There we are. And maybe I'll establish this as my eye level. Right, so what I did is I made sure I had my rulers showing up in the top and the left. And if I click and drag out of a ruler, let's say the horizontal ruler at the top, I can click and drag and position a guide where I need it, right? Same thing vertically if I need that. Right? And let's just open up those Illustrator one of those Illustrator files, and I'll start to plug these things away. Right? Again, this is where I see a lot of errors, like people sort of not quite understanding 1 and 2 point perspective and how you determine scale, particularly as things foreshorten. As they get further away, they get smaller. As they get closer to you, they get larger, or appear larger. So I'll say common people. Here we go. A couple of things here. One, you'll notice that I just assumed black silhouettes on a white field. Right? And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly go to Document Setup, Edit Artboards in Illustrator. I'm going to make a copy of this. I don't know what that is. Get rid of that. Okay. I'm just going to make a second page on an Illustrator. And in this page, what I'm going to do is make a black background. I'll copy and paste these silhouettes over, change them to white so I can see them with a black background behind them. Get them formatted so I can copy and paste them directly into the composition I've just started in Photoshop, which also has a black background and wants white silhouettes. Okay, so I just need to simply do a few things here. I'm just going to, I don't know if you guys know Illustrator. Similar to Photoshop, we have tools on the left, parameters on the top, and boxes along the right. And so what I'm going to do is you notice that there's 2 swatches here. One is for fill color when I draw a rectangle, and the other one's for the stroke or edge color, right, the sort of outline. Right now I don't want an outline. Instead of white, I want black. I just set that. I'm just going to go up to the color swatches and set that. Then I can draw a rectangle that fills this quickly. Right, and now I'm just going to drag all of these silhouettes, copy and paste them over here. And now I'm going to set their fills to white. All right, now I can copy and paste these bad boys and they'll look exactly how I wanted them to look. Okay. Here we go. Okay, let's pick this one. Copy. And I'll just paste, right? Now, if you're going back and forth between Illustrator and Photoshop, I mean, there's some key differences here, right? What is Photoshop really good at? What kind of graphics do Photoshop like? Raster graphics, right? What do raster graphics mean? Yeah, things that are pixel-based, right? So things like photographs that come out of your camera, or renderings that come out of Revit or Rhino, right? Or Twin Motion, right? In other words, it's a rectangle broken up into a grid of small pixels. Each pixel is assigned a color. If I zoom in too far, it gets pixelated and blurry. The effect is lost of sort of seeing a larger image from the sort of mosaic of different colored pixels, right? Whereas Illustrator, I can zoom in on these all I want. It's never going to pixelate, and that's because it's actually tracing each of the line work, right? So you keep these sort of vectors, right? So when you go back and forth between vectors and Illustrator, trying to copy them and paste them into Photoshop, Photoshop goes, oh, this is different. This isn't just another raster graphic. What do you want this to do? Do you want us to pixelate it and turn it into a set of pixels? Do you want it to maintain the vectors, make it a smart object, right? It can actually handle a little bit of vector graphics in Photoshop if you're copying and pasting in, and we can leave those as smart objects. What's also interesting is that you can actually use it just as a path. In other words, it'll use the outline, and you can use that as a selection tool later. But I'm going to say smart object and hit OK. It's going to paste this person in, and now I should be able to move it around, right? And I think what's key is that since I established eye level right there, I'm just going to be as consistent as I can with this. There we go. I'm going to let that sort of sit and right at her eyeball. Now, if I come back here, let's go ahead and get another one. Let's see, what's a good scale figure? Yeah, they have to be good. You don't want just any schmuck in here. All right, let's see. Copy and paste. Smart object, hit OK. When I say done, I'll transform this later, but right, there's this one. Okay, what do you notice? He's for some reason, instead of being on top, one of the top layers, he's sort of below certain layers that we don't want, right? So when I have this selected and I can see which layer it is, I can come back to the layers box, click and drag that layer upwards until it's sort of sitting above, right? Sort of rearranging the trace paper, you know, what's above and what's below each layer. So I can go ahead and stretch this, but again, I want to make it sure it's at his eyeball. Right. Okay. And so if I've established eye level, let's say right there, then that's essentially what's going to happen. Right? Let me just open up a few, maybe open up a group of people here, just sort of. Sometimes it's a pain to, let's see. Entourage, here we go. Groups of people. Oh yeah, look at that. Okay. Oh man, look at that. I've already done the black to white for you in this one. If you want to use some of these. Let's get 4 or 5 people in here. There we go. Copy, paste, smart object, okay. Here they are. They're all different sort of scales. Let's see. Zoom in here. Move them close to where I want them to be. Let's put them back here somewhere in between. There we are. Okay. So a couple things you might notice as you start to scale people in, entourage, things like that. Sometimes they stick out like a sore thumb. We're just using silhouettes, so it's a little easier to accomplish this. But oftentimes, let's say you're doing things in color, you might sort of desaturate certain things, turn down the color, change the color values, darken things up or brighten things up, or maybe even change their transparency. I don't want these to be the focal point. I don't want people to just sort of zoom in and go, look at that guy. I want them to look at the architecture. The scale figures are simply there to sort of suggest scale and maybe some program, right? And so I'm going to go ahead and select them. I could just simply turn down their opacity until I get something that, you know, doesn't stand out too much, sort of blends in, whatever. Okay. I've seen other ways of doing this, right? So I've seen where you actually do the outline with, let's say, with more white line work. Then you just turn the fill half transparent. So if you wanted to do something like that, let me just do it here with these. Let's say this one first. I can right click on a layer. I can go to blending options. And then over here I can say stroke. And I can say that it's going to be, the stroke color is going to be white. It's going to have an opacity of 100. And I can even give it this sort of stroke size. Let's see, then what I can do, oh, sorry, fill versus stroke. Fill color, white, stroke versus fill. I'm just not seeing where I would, I'm not seeing any kind of preview, really. What goes here? Well, then I could just turn down its fill color, right? And you can see that I still have a sort of a white outline that's opaque. And I could go back into that blending. Again, you can see once I've done that, I can go back to the stroke. Come on now, just bring it back up, the blending options. For that stroke, it's now check marked, and I could always change the line weight if I need to, right? So let's say I wanted to. So there's, again, lots of little things you can drill down into in Photoshop, depending on what you're trying to accomplish, and how you want things to read, right? So let me just turn these down a little bit, and there we are. Okay, let's see. What else can I do? Here's a perspective where I took a, I have like white sky and white ground plane, right? There's nothing saying that you can't simply use a plain white background and start to compose these drawings with black lines, right? So I would just, again, do the same exercise, bring them in, start to compose them, try to understand where things might align, right? How do I make an overall composition that communicates 3 different perspective views, plus sort of, again, trying to understand how it was made with diagrams, as well as elevation or plan information. So let's start with that. I'll go back to this one, and I'm going to open up some things I took out here. Let's see. That's a nice plan. Look at that drawing. That's a really nice drawing. Maybe that one. Maybe this one. Yeah, I like this one. That one's really nice. All right. So what you can see is that it has a transparent background, but I have a black line, right? So if I copy and paste this in to, let's see, Command A, Command C, and then paste this in to something with a black background, you're not going to really see much. It's going to be pretty dark. Right, so first of all, I guess I'm going to size this appropriately so it doesn't go off the page. Maybe also try to move it up out of the way here a little bit. Ever so slowly. Just holding down my keyboard up button here. I'm just going to try to drag it away from these, and then I can always position it later into place. But I can't see it. Of course, there's ways to deal with that. The simplest way, and I'll just again show you or remind you, if you've already seen this before, is if you go to Image Pull Down, right, we have a series of adjustments we can make. So here we can change things like brightness and contrast, exposure. We can change brightness, contrast, and exposure with their own dedicated tools or using levels or curves. We can also change the coloration, like vibrant, via turning up the vibrance or down the vibrance, turning up or down the saturation, changing the hue. Hue is just another word for color value. So like red is a hue, brown is a hue, yellow is a hue, right? And so what you can do is you can start to shift where yellow now becomes orange and everything sort of rotates around the color wheel if you have color graphics. Color balance, black and white. So you can see there's a number of tools here, and one of them, of course, is invert, right? Which now just sort of changes black to white and white to black. That would change red to green or blue to orange or violet to yellow, right? Again, just looking at the opposites of the color wheel. And so here we go. Now I have white drawing on a black background. Now I'm ready to sort of place this where I need to. Oops. If I can pick the right layer here. There we go. Oh, nope. Okay, so do you see what's happening? I'm trying to pick this layer, but I keep accidentally selecting the black background that I drew, that layer. So again, just quickly point out that when you have these problems, you can go ahead and select the layer that you don't want to select and lock it down so you don't accidentally move it, drag it, or whatever. Makes it a lot easier to start to pick the things above it that you actually do want to select, move, rotate, whatever. I think by default now, Photoshop, when you start to select these layers, it gives you these handles so you can start to resize, scale, or if you hold down or move your cursor towards the corners, you can start to automatically, let me just select again, automatically rotate it, right? You can click and drag and rotate it around. And of course you can always hold down the shift and do that in increments of 15 degrees or whatever. But if you're not seeing that for whatever reason, you can go to Edit, Pull Down, and Transform, right? So, and the shortcut for this is Command T, right? So let's say I select something, Command T, now I can start to, again, I'll bring up those handles to start to scale. Looks like it already sort of does that for us already, which is kind of nice now. Didn't always used to do that. I've seen a lot of tools come and go. This one sometimes gets a little better, sometimes gets a little worse every new edition. It's really bugging me that these don't match this, so I'm just going to go ahead and turn them back up and quickly make them match the others. Blending options, again, show you where that is. For each one, you can say, okay, the stroke is going to be 2, it's white. Okay, same thing with this one. I'm going to go ahead and right-click, blending options, click that stroke, double check, make sure that the parameters are still the same, 2 pixel width of outline, and it's white. And then I can sort of, again, just adjust its fill color down. right? For each of these. All right, that's a little better. Okay. And these still look a little goofy. You know why? They look brighter because it's white on top of more denser line work. So I might either move these somewhere else so that they're not overlapping and detracting from the architecture, or I might turn them down a little more and just sort of eyeball it and sort of look and see what visually makes sense. Right? Again, a lot of this is just you simply using your best judgment, your critical eye. Right? That's the important part. Again, more and more, even in Photoshop and Illustrator, you're seeing things can be automated, right? The key thing is what's good and what's not, what's more successful and what's less, and why, right? Having the situational awareness to understand what the problem is, begin to sort of look at the results and start to, again, weigh pros and cons, evaluate trade-offs, understand what's more or less successful. So anyway, I'm maybe gonna try to do a few things to this layer, just to brighten up the white line work a little more. All right, and so I showed you where some of these tools are in image pull down adjustment. So if I select, let's say this layer, image adjustments, and I can start to play around with brightness, contrast, exposure. But I wanted to show you how you can do this in a way where you'll always have the sort of sliders and you can always readjust things later, right? So if rather than going up there, often a lot of those tools you can actually find in the adjustments layers. So you can select this layer, and you can see that in the adjustments tab here in this box, I have things like brightness and contrast, levels, curves, exposure, vibrance, hue, saturation, right? All of those options that I had before. What's nice about these is that, well, let me just back up. If I take this and I start to play around with its properties here, and then I save, and then I open up the file later, I can't go back. Let's say I want to go back to the original asset and start to try again and do a better job, right? Whereas if I do them here with these adjustment layers, watch what happens. Let me do brightness and contrast, for example. What it'll do is it'll make a brightness and contrast adjustment layer down here in the layers box. And now everything below this adjustments layer is going to get the properties, the brightness and the contrast properties. So if I start to change things, I can brighten the whole thing up, right? Now, that could be really great or really bad, depending on if you don't want to brighten everything. You just want to brighten and darken certain layers with different settings, right? So if I hold down my Option key, I believe it's your Alt key on a PC, and I'm keep my cursor. See how my cursor changes when I get to the little edge between the adjustment layer and then the layer underneath? I can click, and now it's only going to affect just that layer that this arrow is pointing down to. So now I can just brighten this up, right, or darken it. Okay, so that's how you can do it and sort of, again, maintain the sort of parametric sliders that you want. If you want to come back in and just readjust something slightly, right? So again, I think you appreciate that after using a little bit of Grasshopper, right? The idea you can open up the thing, make a few changes, everything propagates, and republish out. In Rhino, you bake it, or in Grasshopper, you bake it back out to Rhino. Here, I can save as a JPEG or PNG or TIFF or whatever file type they want. Okay, so. All right, so again, I'm not want to beat a dead horse here. I'm just going to maybe open up a few more things, copy and paste them in, adjust a few things. If in case you miss something, maybe it's helpful. But again, go ahead and just start working. When I'm done with that, I'll probably just step away and start wandering around. I can answer individual questions, look over your shoulder, give some feedback if you want it. But again, a reminder that this composition is due the Monday the 15th, okay? Okay. And I suspect Canvas probably reminds you of these things when you have something up to date. I mean, I've never been a student with Canvas, but I assume that that's one of the both annoying and great things about Canvas is that it probably bugs the hell out of you when you have something due soon. All right. Let's see. I know. I was just going to take these diagrams and let's take a look at those. Those were really the weak link and what I thought I had before. Here we go. So I brought in some axons like this. Maybe I'll just go ahead and open these up, try to put these in. You can see that these are black line drawings on white background. So I have the same issue here. And look, if they're all consistent, and they're all going to be like let's say a strip along the bottom, right? Maybe that's where I actually just sort of make a white stripe, and then I make that the bottom, and then I just sort of plug these in. But I'll try either way. Let's see. I'll go Axon 01, select all, copy, and then paste, right? Here it is. You can see that it needs to be sized, right? And I'm just going to go ahead and quickly do some of that just to get these things in here so I can then start to have fun. Command A, Command C, Command V, again and again and again. Oops, I just accidentally drug the guide. I'm just going to try to get that close. It might not be perfect yet, but try to get it close at least. There's Axon 1, I can close that. Axon 2, I can close that. Axon 3, select all, copy, and paste. All right. Man, I love a good copy and paste. There we are. If I don't hold down the shift key and I try to do this, I resize it from the corners, it'll maintain the aspect ratio each time. So just be careful you're not stretching things. That's nothing worse than when that happens. Command A, Command C, and Command V. There we are. Hold down that space button, right, space bar on your keyboard, and then your cursor becomes a pen tool with a little fist. You can start to move things around and get really dangerous. Oh yeah, look at that. All right. Boom. All right. Dang. Yeah, something like that. I mean, that's pretty close. Not terrible. So what I'm going to do is maybe slide these over, sort of space them out the way I want. Yeah. So if I actually, took a little more time and sort of fixed all of these sort of issues, and maybe I just make that white base at the bottom of my thing or at the top or whatever. But let's go ahead and let's invert each of these. I'm just going to go ahead and invert, adjustments, invert. I just looked at this. Remember, you can always look at the pull down and go invert. It just says that it's Command I. Okay. So now I have a keyboard shortcut, Command I, Command I, Command I. It's hard to kind of see what's going on here. They're really way too small. And so maybe I'll make them larger. And maybe before I start to trim things, I'll make them larger. So because all the boxes are the same size, so maybe that's what I'll do. Let me just maybe look at a different way of doing that. What I could do is drag guides down so I can start to understand where the top and the bottom should be. Then I can start to resize everything really precisely. The ruler isn't showing up. Again, this is the same thing in Photoshop, it's the same thing in Illustrator, and same thing in InDesign. All the Adobe stuff, if you go to View, pull down, you can toggle those rulers on or off. And now let's see, let's go ahead and, there we are. Now let's give that little diagram a happy little friend. Do my best Bob Ross imitation here. Do the same thing here. What you can see is that these have a lot of just blank space to the left and the right that I'm going to start to crop out, and so I can start to put these things together and still maintain a certain size. Right, there we are. Okay, so now I know I really don't need like all of this part of that layer. Just delete it away. Right, same thing here. I can select, deselect, select this layer, start to determine which parts of it I delete away. Now I can start to move this layer closer. Yay! I love it when a plan comes together. All right, same thing here. So again, just sort of getting rid of the extra stuff I don't need. Lining these up so that they actually read better. And then once I get that, I can sort of take them all at once and scale them all up to fit the page. And I'll probably, since they'll be bigger, I could probably see the line work a little better as well, which is always handy. Okay, and then this last one over here on the side. Let's get rid of that stuff. Oh yeah, look at that. Okay. Really importantly, sometimes you have these things as different layers, but you say, I actually just want all these at the same layer. You can select all of them at once, 1, 2, 3, 4 right here. Just select the top one, hold down the shift key, select the bottom one. I've selected all the ones in between as well. I can right click and then I can say just merge these layers. Now they're one layer together. And from there I can then start to resize a little easier, sort of globally, like the whole thing. All right. I can also then apply another brightness contrast layer to this one. Instead of that one, maybe I'll pick exposure and see what that does. Right? Hold down the option key to just apply it to this layer 9, and then here I can start to set. Right, so I can make the whites whiter. I can play around with the contrast and where the black point is. Right, start to change the highlights and things like that. Start to make this thing pop a little better, right? Sort of weighing back and forth how this thing works. And last but not least, you know, I might, when I decide that I'm done, you know, come back here and say there's some wasted space at the top and bottom. Oops. Rather than original ratio, I'll do width and height resolution here. Don't know why it's doing this to me. There we go. And I can then carefully, just carefully, ever so carefully, crop that. You know, again, I look at how much space I have on the left and the right, and the top and the bottom, and just sort of even things out so it doesn't look like it's going to fall over. You know, okie doke. Okay, so again, you know, you could go with trying to demonstrate, like, you know, it doesn't have to look exactly like the one I just showed you at the beginning, right? I think this is a chance for you to sort of take a little bit of time. And look, it's going to take a couple of hours, maybe, right? And this is a 3 credit hour class. God damn it, it should take a couple hours, right? It's the last thing of the project, right? So spend some time. Do it sooner rather than later in case any questions pop up. You actually have time, not Sunday night at 11 p.m., to email me and get some help, okay? I mean, you can try it, but I'm not going to be looking at my email at 11 p.m. Like, I have a very strict thing. At a certain time, I turn off my phone, and I pour a beer or a margarita or something, and I like relax. And one day of the week, I actually sleep. Okay. Don't have to worry about helping little one with algebra. Don't have to worry about this, that, the other. Should I just maybe float around? You guys can work? Yeah? Sounds good. Okay, great. Save? Nah, not really. I mean, I'm not going to really do this for myself here. We have about 25 minutes or so, right, in class time. You need help? Look at that, isn't that great? That spine. No, I had the trusses in there. In fact, I like how they get thicker and they reflect and just make them thinner.
All right, this is one of
Oh, what you're gonna do is, if you wanna do something similar, is you go to the layers and turn all the Rhino stuff off. I'm gonna open up Grasshopper. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna show Grasshopper graphics in stages of which are two minutes on off.
Not sure if I saved my.
Sure.
That's okay. Oh. I had to add slides.
Well, it's doing something, right? So the first thing I would do is I would say, okay, by default, out of the box, Grasshopper shades everything red. And you selected it shades it green. And you don't want to do that. You want to change it to white. So what I would do is I go to display, preview settings, this is Grasshopper. I turn, instead of the red preview, turn it to white. Now I can turn these widgets on or off depending on what I'm trying to show. So I'm going to turn this one off, turn this one off. I turn these off. Alright, so now, look at that. You have the curves you started with. You can populate those with frames. Right? And you can bring that snapshot out as a PNG, right? Same way you did before. Edit, or, sorry, that's Grasshopper. Rhino. Rhino, view, capture, file, right? And then you can turn on some more stuff, connecting those with lines, you know, projecting things out. So you can turn some of these things on or off until you get to the next step. And then go ahead and just go back to Rhino and capture that.
How do I get the transparent backgrounds to the box?
Well, so if you want this background, don't. But that's right here when you capture the file. First of all, it brings up this box, and that's where you say, do I want to transfer your background or not? So you can click it and say, yeah. Do you want the world access to see plane? I would. Okay. Does that make sense? And they get it applied and it asks you where to save it, what file name is.
It's gonna put it in your folder.
Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What you're asking is the question it asks me